Morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Can you all hear me in the back? It's nice to see everyone filling up the room versus everyone on one side or all the back. So thank you for all attending. So this is a special event. I feel like I'm preparing for the Academy Awards going through this. This event has taken months of time, so I want to appreciate everyone's hard work to put this together. This is my first time hosting the Alper event. It's been a privilege to be here and to be part of this process. As a new DIO, one of the things that is a challenge is how to recognize our residents. And this certainly represents a significant milestone in my mind of how we recognize our residents for the hard work they do here. So I really appreciate everyone attending and coming to today's event. Unfortunately, Jim Coleman is on vacation, so normally he would say a few words. We do have a couple of people from our C-suite here, so be happy to introduce them later on. But my name is Paul Schwartzberg. Thank you. Took only a year for people to know what a DIO is. So I'm the DIO, an Associate Dean of Academic Affairs. I want to welcome all of you to the, you guys can hear me, all right? I can talk without the mic. I want to welcome you all to the 17 years annual Dr. Harold Alper Keynote Address and Humanitarian Awards Ceremony. So this is quite an event. You know, as I was thinking about this event, how many of you ever seen the movie Patch Adams? It starred Robin Williams. As I was thinking about this event, I was thinking about, there was a quote, I'm not sure if it's from Patch Adams, but Patch Adams was this famous doctor who believed in humor and humanistic qualities when he taught and when he took care of patients. And one of the things that was said in the movie, which still sticks with me today, is what they said was, you treat a disease, you win, you lose. You treat a person, I guarantee you'll win no matter what the outcome. Just kind of remember that as you go through this process. I want to let you know again, if you don't know by now, this is an amazing event. Just to remind you why we're here, we're recognizing a graduating resident from UTHSC College of Medicine at Chattanooga. That's the correct way of saying it, by the way, who has demonstrated the humanistic qualities of the late Dr. Harold Alper, which is integrity, compassion, service to Erlanger and to the Chattanooga community. And before we start, this event really wouldn't be possible, obviously, without the generosity and the kindness of the Alper family and the Alper Award Endowment. So I just want to recognize we have 3 members of the Alper family here this morning. I want them to stand up so that we can acknowledge them for doing this. Dr. Chess Alper is here with us. Please give a round of applause. I just met everyone at dinner last night, so I'm trying to remember everyone's names. His wife, Carol, and his sister, Debbie. So I really thank them for their generosity in doing this. We had a great dinner last night. We talked to each of the residents about why they went into medicine and what they plan to do in the future. So we really couldn't do this without their support for recognizing hardworking residents and fellows for the past 17 years. So this is pretty phenomenal. So we'll get started. So I'm going to introduce Dr. Mukta Panda, who's going to introduce the keynote speaker. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul. Good morning, everyone. I want to echo my congratulations to all the nominees and really a deep gratitude to the Alper family. I was here when this program first started, and to recognize for the reason why we went into healthcare was truly a gift to this community. So thank you very much. So I really have the privilege of introducing our speaker today, but I'd like to give you a little bit of background as to why I recommended Dr. Khan to the Alper family and the committee when we were deciding who to invite. So About a year and a half ago, I read in one of the journals a very provocative question that was put forward to us. Are we in a humanism revolution? And as I was thinking about that, truly we've made immense progress in technology. Today, computers and robots can build cars, fly planes, fight wars, manage money, represent defendants in the court, diagnose cancer, and even perform cardiac surgery. But as I got to thinking about it even more, I thought with all these technological advances, are we placing a premium on the interaction and relationships? The very skills that make us human and that are so important to who we are, especially in the healthcare vocation. So as I was contemplating on that, I had the privilege of listening to Dr. Khan as he shared one of his stories that he had written in the journal. And then I was reminded of the fact that really what connects us to each other and our patients is our stories. Our stories are unique to us, but they have universal resonance. And I thought he'd be wonderful for him to share his stories with us today. So with that, it is truly an honor and privilege to introduce Dr. Khan. And it was really wonderful to meet him in person for the first time yesterday and not on the virtual squares a year ago. So his resume is pretty incredible, and we would be here a long time if I went through it all. And we have quite a detailed version of it in the program, but I'd like to highlight a few things. Dr. Khan graduated from the University of California at Berkeley and then matriculated at the University of California, San Francisco, where he was inducted into the Gold-Headed Cane Society and AOA. He was an intern and resident at Johns Hopkins Hospital on the Osler Medical Service, which is very prestigious, and then returning to UCSF for an oncology fellowship. He joined the faculty at UCSF and accepted an appointment in the AIDS program at San Francisco General Hospital. And then he had a very accomplished research career related to HIV and other related topics. He received a lot of funding from NIH and other foundations. After 25 years, Jim moved to Stanford to be chief of medicine at the Palo Alto VA and vice chair of the Department of Medicine at Stanford. 4 years later, he became one of the directors at the VA hospital. His most recent activity is focused on mentoring and narrative medicine. He has published his stories in JAMA, Annals of Internal Medicine, Lancet, and the Journal of Palliative Medicine. He's received numerous awards and some specially related to mentoring and teaching. He's an avid art collector, and it was really wonderful to hear about his passion for why and how we connect to our patients and each other through stories. So with that, Dr. Khan.
I better put on my glasses. Thank you for that kind introduction. I also want to thank, everyone can hear perfectly, Paul Schwartzberg and obviously Mukta Panda for their invitation to this important event. I also want to thank the Erhanger Enterprise and their effective staff, especially the recently retired Pam Scott. And of course, congratulations to the resident fellow nominees to the Dr. Harold Alper Humanitarian Award. This morning, I'm going to relate 7 stories from my life and career as a physician. This is the first time I have spoken about these stories. I hope you find them meaningful. It was difficult for me to write these stories down and to tell them to you. It's easier to publish them. So I hope you'll provide me with your understanding and kindness. My wife is a great storyteller. She advises actually everyone to know your story's through line. The stories I tell you provide principles that help me with my professional life. They are my through line and are linked to the concept of empathy. I also hope these stories provide you with greater underlying importance of storytelling. let me start by giving you the punchline. This is just in case you fall asleep during the talk. I hope you don't fall asleep, but you never know. Maybe I won't. So here's the summary slide. I'll try and convince you during my talk. One is become an attentive listener. Stay connected to your emotions. Treat teaching and feedback as gifts. Remember that everyone is important. Acknowledge and learn from your mistakes. Remain truthful and provide hope. And find the joy in your work and in others. Maya Angelou wrote, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." She's writing about the power of empathy. I found that empathy is a central element in my toolbox, and demonstrating empathy helps to sustain and elevate the clinician-patient relationship. Empathy is also an important part of my life, and I hope to explain this to you too during this talk. What is empathy? If nothing else, empathy is the ability to understand and share other people's feelings. It involves a fundamental connection to understand others' emotions. The author Bren Brown wrote that empathy has no script. There's no right way or wrong way to do it. It's simply listening, holding space, withholding judgment, emotionally connecting, and communicating the incredible healing message: you're not alone. I want to make the case that although empathy is a complex skill, it's one that can be learned and developed. I have developed empathy over the course of my 42 years in medicine. And I will admit, empathy did not come easily or naturally to me, but I have learned how to become empathetic. There are many different ways to learn how to develop an empathetic connection, and the stories I will tell you today relate to how I discovered my own pathway in witnessing, developing, understanding, and applying empathy. First, you have to become an attentive listener. I want to introduce you to a dignified master clinician, Dr. Philip Tumilty from Johns Hopkins. He was the most attentive listener I ever witnessed. He would sit on the patient's bed, he would look closely at the patient, occasionally hold their hand, and his face would mirror his concerns. He rarely smiled. I don't know why he's smiling here, or frowned. I asked him about that, and he said, "I'm not a judge, but a doctor, and doctors do not judge." I wasn't sure what he meant, but I knew it was profound. At first, I thought he modeled dispassion, withholding his feelings as a way to preserve his objectivity or even to remove himself from the intimate conversations he was having. Over time, I realized I was wrong. Dr. Tumilty was modeling empathy by helping his patients and me reflect on their situations and to reveal their thoughts through their words and their body language. Dr. Tumilty was modeling that you cannot look at the situation through your patient's eyes unless you're willing to hear what they have to say. That's why listening skills are a vital part of building empathy. He would not anticipate a patient's words, but would wait for the patient to think about his or her experience and feelings. His interactions were longer than others, but he never rushed his patients. His empathetic connection building required time, and Dr. Tumilty was never in a hurry. His patients loved him for his patience, and although we were rushing to complete our tasks, Dr. Tumilty demonstrated that empathetic clinicians could not be rushed, and as a result, he did not hurry through these patient connections. Later in life, I would realize that providing patients with time through attentive listening was necessary for a true empathetic connection. Multitasking is a barrier to attentive listening and developing empathy. So be aware that answering phone calls, reading email, even writing notes could disrupt the connection. Empathetic physicians would ensure that patients had their undivided attention. I am grateful to Dr. Tumulty for these lessons. So if you want to have empathy, become an attentive listener. Next story. Stay in touch with your own emotions. A recent encounter provided me with the all too close experience of the essential importance of understanding and staying connected to my own emotions. This is the most difficult story I will tell you this morning. I might have trouble telling it to you. Give me the time to compose myself if I need it. Can you guess who this is? It's a picture of my father. 2 years ago, he fell down a staircase and was rushed unconscious to the emergency room at a local trauma center. He was on anticoagulation for atrial fibrillation, and I was immediately distraught. For years, I was his lead clinician, but not his primary clinician. His brain MRI revealed a massive intracranial hemorrhage. My family turned to me for advice, insight, and recommendations. I did not want this role. It was not the responsibility that worried me. It was that I was so emotionally connected to him. I wanted to be his loving son, not his physician or the guide for my family. I felt love, loss, worry, and a deep concern for my father and for others in my family. Staying in touch with my feelings helped me become more aware of my emotions and the emotions of others. I worried about the loss we were all going to experience, and I wept for our loss. I tried to stay focused on what my father needed. Eventually, we all realized that my father would not recover from his trauma, and it was time to discontinue life support. The team prepared to discontinue him from the ventilator. They said he might survive for a few hours. I knew it would be minutes. My family drifted out of my father's room, and so did I. My wife turned to me. She said, "Don't leave him alone. He would want you there." I stayed with him. My emotions and my feelings were raw. As you can see, they still are. But at that moment, I felt an empathetic connection to him. I wanted to stay in contact with him and with my feelings. My father was intubated, but I could talk to him, and I did. Soon he was extubated and died. I held his hand. I witnessed his final breath, his final heartbeat. I stayed focused on him. It was without a doubt the worst feeling of my life as a son. Yet it was one of my proudest moments as a clinician. It was empathy that helped me through this sorrowful event. So to gain empathy, stay connected to your emotions. Next story. Now it'll be a lot easier. Mentees and students sometimes may not recognize when they receive important learning. An empathetic, wonderful clinician, Dr. Karen Friday, pictured here, carries a little sign with her when she is working during cardiology rounds. When she explains the pathogenesis of heart failure, or she describes an unusual murmur, or when she uncovers a previously unrecognized key element in a patient's history, she will raise a sign. It reads, teaching. In this way, trainees pay special attention to this new gift from Dr. Friday. The other side of the sign reads, feedback. Since feedback, an important aspect of teaching, is usually unrecognized by the learners. Our best clinicians treat feedback as a gift. What the listener does with the gift is difficult to know. Some people return the gift without much consideration of the thoughtfulness of the feedback and how it was tailored and specific. Of course, I assume that feedback is not superficial or inappropriate. Persons receiving feedback may become defensive or may not consider the feedback authentic, and thus they have lost an opportunity to improve themselves. Others simply re-gift the feedback to another without considering if it's appropriate or helpful. This is another lost opportunity to reflect and improve through thoughtful feedback. We all know how hard it is to find people who will be honest and helpful with feedback. The more time that is taken to provide authentic and thoughtful feedback, the more comfortable you will become with these conversations, and the more valuable the conversations will be for the listener. I also urge the listeners to try on the feedback like you would kind of an ugly Christmas sweater. See if it fits. You can always send it back to the feedback store, but try it on. So if you want an empathetic connection to your learners, treat teaching and feedback as gifts. Next story. The very best physicians, frequently identified as master clinicians, want to empathetically connect with others, but they do not dwell on their reputation or their accomplishments. I vividly remember my first encounter with one of the truly great clinicians I would ever know, Dr. Victor McCusick. He's the father of medical genetics. He single-handedly described Marfan syndrome. Once I attended a party at his home in Baltimore. I had never met him. I rang the doorbell and a tall, gangly man in a white dinner jacket, black bow tie, and neatly combed white hair opened the door. He asked me in a soft voice who I was and what I wanted. I told him I was invited to a party by Dr. McCusick. He smiled and asked if he could take my raincoat. Certainly, I said, and thanked him for this courtesy. I entered the stately home, received a glass of champagne, and walked around meeting the other guests. And I had a lot of fun, but I was desperate to meet the famous Dr. McCusick. Finally, I asked someone if they could point out Dr. McCusick to me. He laughed and pointed to the tall, gangly man welcoming new guests and hanging up their coats. I was shocked that this humble man, who I thought was a member of the party staff, was one of the greatest master clinicians I would ever meet. A few years later, I repeated this story to him. He smiled and laughed out loud. He did not remember the interaction, but he did say, always treat everyone like they are important, because they are. It's not about how I perceive others or how other people perceive me, but it's all about how we communicate and bond with each other. I learned from Dr. McCusick that the very best clinicians embrace their humility, humanity, and honesty. And when combined with empathy, they connect with others. And remember that everyone is important. Despite empathetic care, we make mistakes and learn from them. One day of a planned discharge from the hospital, a patient of mine suddenly became critically ill. He was rushed to the ICU, and upon reflection and careful review of the medical record, we deduced that he had received a high dose of his beta blocker, a medication he needed. We had ordered it incorrectly. I reviewed all this with the team. The ordering intern was despondent, and the resident, Alex Perino, who's pictured here, was forlorn. I was sad and told them it was not their error, but mine, since I was the supervising physician. Every day on the wards, my focus is how to help trainees achieve greater understanding of medicine, how to gain clinical insight, and how I might model professionalism. With this error, I could hit on all three areas of focus. We discussed the error. We deliberated about how to improve his care. We talked about glucagon therapy to help with this toxicity. We discussed medication review to avoid overdosing. In the end, there was one more task for me to do. I asked Alex to walk with me, and we went to the patient's bedside. I told our patient he was in the ICU because he received an overdose of one of his medications. I apologized for this mistake. I told him it was my error. He shocked us both by saying, "Doc, it's okay. You were just trying to do your best. This happens, and I appreciate your telling me." We were both surprised by his grace. I believe that because of our empathetic connection and our honesty, our patient provided us with understanding and forgiveness. At the end of the month, when I provided feedback, I reviewed the lessons we learned during our time together, including disease pathogenesis and disease management, but most important was how to deal with a mistake. I said we all would make mistakes, yet we had to learn from them and commit to not making the mistake again. Everyone looked around and nodded their heads. A few shed a tear, including me. You will make mistakes. Learn from them. Try your best not to repeat them. This is a picture of my younger self, and this next story happened when I was a younger physician. I witnessed an empathetic break with the patient. Even worse, I think I precipitated it. It involved a patient in the ICU with significant heart failure and hypotension. He was hanging on to life by his fingertips. His faithful wife was his permanent bedside companion. There was a fragile balance between his heart failure as measured by his blood pressure and his multiple organ failure represented by low urinary output and rising serum creatinine. He was making some daily progress, and I felt we enjoyed an empathetic connection. After morning rounds, I returned to his bed, and I tried to present a factual and humane outlook on his health status and what the future might look like. I said, "This past Christmas was probably your last family celebration." They were shocked and they were livid. And they were right. What was I thinking? I was trying to help them focus on the challenges they would face in the hoped for not too distant future. Yet our past conversations had focused on their hour-to-hour care and on the reality they faced, and not on the longer-term challenges they would encounter. Suddenly, because of my focus onto their future and away from their present, they lost confidence in me, and we suffered an empathetic break. I tried to apologize, but it was useless. I excused myself and told them I would return in an hour and went to the team workroom. I reviewed his clinical situation as well as what I said and what I should have said. How would I reconnect with the patient and his wife? I needed to understand the situation from their perspective, look at it from their point of view. We needed to reestablish trust. I needed to be empathetic in a way that I had not been during the morning. I went to his bedside, and of course, his wife was there. I was ready to give my very best apology. Before I could begin, they apologized to me for their outburst. I was shocked. Yet, I still had to look at the situation through their eyes. They needed me to be their advocate. They needed me to be their interpreter of his health data. They needed me to be hopeful. They were just barely holding on, and I tried to make them face their future and staying focused on their daily struggle. Indeed, they were trying to establish an empathetic connection with me. For the first time, I realized that empathy could flow not only from me to my patient, but it also flowed from my patients to me. They helped heal our breach. They needed me to be hopeful as well as empathetic. I never deceived them, but I did not focus on their future, and they did not ask me what their future might bring. I understood what they needed, and they accepted me. I realized that sometimes empathy was not sufficient. Sometimes hope was just as important. Becoming vulnerable and open to this new realization made the difference with my relationship to many patients, and I'm grateful to them. From them, I relearned the value of hope. Next story. This is Dr. Gene Washington. He represents some of the greatest aspects of healthcare. He's a trained OBGYN, but did not practice much in his life. He's also an epidemiologist who studied the trends in HIV and infant care. He became the administrative leader at UCSF, then UCLA, and finally the president at Duke. He found his life work in helping others achieve their potential in medicine and in life. How did he do this? He found the joy in excellence. He was not afraid to be the very best version of himself. He inspired others to be and to do their very best too, not out of fear or worry or competition, but to find joy in doing your best work. We all wanted to be like Gene, and generations of professionals and thousands of learners wanted to be like Gene too. We all learned to find our personal joy in work like Dr. Washington, and as a result, we were all better at our jobs, better with connecting to others, and more empathetic. Not only did we want to find joy in ourselves and in our work and in our life, but here is the magic sauce: not to be selfish in the pursuit of joy and to help others find joy too. Gene wanted to help others find their own joy in life and in the work. I will forever be grateful, and I still like to be like Gene. So to develop empathy, be the very best version of yourself and find the joy in your work and in others. Okay, if the person next to you nodded off, go ahead and give them a gentle nudge. And I will repeat what I said at the beginning. Maybe they will think I haven't started yet. Here are the 7 stories I told you. Become an attentive listener. Stay connected to your emotions. Treat teaching and feedback as gifts. And remember that everyone is important. Acknowledge and learn from your mistakes. Remain truthful and provide hope. Find the joy in your work and help others find joy too. I've told you 7 stories today, and they are linked together. Yes, they all involve me, but I'm sure that similar stories apply to each of you too. I urge you to be aware of your own stories and write them down. You can share your stories with others. The very best among us are purposeful with their preparation and achieve authentic, empathetic connections. What distinguishes the very best clinicians is their determined focus on empathy, how they listen attentively to others, and how they truthfully communicate and provide hope and find joy in life and in work. I'm going to come off script for just a moment and just talk about story writing. Story writing doesn't come naturally to me. In fact, I'm still haunted by my freshman English class at Berkeley. I had this brilliant professor, Professor Zwerdling. You might have heard about his son. He's on NPR pretty regularly. He's a news reporter. Anyway, Dr. Zwerdling put together a fantastic course We read old literature and new literature. What I mean by that is we read Hamlet and we read Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. We read Jane Eyre and we read Wide Sargasso Sea. We read Leaves of Grass and we read Howl by Allen Ginsberg. And we did a lot of writing, as you could well imagine. Well, at the very end of the semester, Dr. Zwerdling called me in and said, Jim, you have a lot of great ideas, but you have a tin ear for the language. What? I'm still plagued by that comment. And I think I still write to try and convince Dr. Zwerdling he was wrong. I don't think he was wrong. I just have to write and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite. We have all witnessed growth of clinicians, from students to trainees to colleagues. You will too. At the beginning of their careers, every clinician has nascent empathy. And in retrospect, the very best clinicians do not begin their career with more or less empathy than their colleagues. What seems to distinguish these outstanding physicians from their peers is their commitment to strengthen and deepen their attentive listening. They learn to stay in contact with their emotions and become courageous enough to reveal their vulnerabilities. They reflect on their experiences, their feelings, and their own emotional development. They provide hope to others. The very best physicians learn from their mistakes, and they search for joy and help others search for joy too. Finally, I hope you each appreciate the miracle that we witness every day. For those of you who don't spend a lot of time in astronomy, this is our Milky Way galaxy. Billions of stars, billions of planets. It's amazing. And this is our universe with billions of galaxies. Einstein said there are only two ways to live your life. One is though nothing is a miracle. Everything is guided by the principles of physics, chemistry. The other is as though everything is a miracle. These are my 3 grandkids. They are a miracle. Well, do you have patience for one more story? Raise your hand if you want another story. Keep them down if you don't. Okay. On the first day of a recent ward attending rotation, a third-year medical resident presented a case to me. As the presentation ended, it was clear that a metastatic cancer was the unifying diagnosis for his multiple problems, including ascites, pain, fatigue, hypotension, and kidney failure. His cancer already had failed to respond to initial and secondary chemotherapies. The patient was dying, and we were faced with helping him and his family accept his rapidly approaching death. It's a common situation, and yet how do we teach and train residents to thoughtfully and sympathetically communicate with clarity, kindness, and empathy about a patient's rapidly approaching death? We discussed how to talk to a dying patient. We talked about our body language, how to sit or stand in the discussion. We talked about how to reach out and physically connect or not with a patient. We spoke about being aware that patients and family members might be uncomfortable or unready for this discussion, and would direct our conversations away from death. We talked about how to redirect the conversation back to the matter at hand. We spoke about clarifying the patient's wishes regarding resuscitation and life-prolonging interventions. And finally, we talked about sharing the 5 tasks before one dies. What are these 5 tasks? We have to get the patient to say out loud to someone these 5 things. I forgive you, because indeed, Someone must have hurt them during his or her life, and they need to make amends and not pass without completing this task. Forgive me, because our patients must have hurt other people, and they must be able to say, forgive me, in order to try and heal that pain before they pass. They have to be able to say thank you. There must be something that they're grateful for in this life, and they have to tell people what they're thankful for. They have to say, I love you, because undoubtedly they've loved someone in their life, and they have to be able to say goodbye. And you can't do this in your final breaths. These are not simple tasks, and this is not an easy conversation. It's a powerful experience to speak to patients about their death. It's so powerful that I learned when I teach these 5 tasks, I have to ask the residents to practice with me before they have this conversation with patients. Why practice? Well, practicing provides us a chance to examine and manage our own emotions before we meet with patients. I can use the practice too. I know that sharing this discussion will help the residents accomplish their professional duties, and I am inspired too. I understand how hard the skill is to acquire and admire their bravery associated with developing this new competency. After practicing, the president arranged his thoughts and we went to the patient's bedside. Our patient was in his room. He had some family members with him, and I witnessed the conversation. It was difficult, poignant, and the resident was terrific. We emerged from the room feeling we had honored our patient and eased his suffering. The next day, we went to the room and we were introduced to one of the patient's stepsons. Our patient said, I heard you yesterday, and this is one of the people I love, and I did not want to die without him knowing it. I called him, thanked him for everything he did for me. I told him what he meant to me, and he flew out from Texas to be with me. I want to thank you for helping me and reminding me what I need to do before I pass. The resident and I looked at each other, profoundly moved by what we'd heard and experienced with this man. That day, the resident said, I have had hundreds of code discussions, as I'm sure many of the residents had too, with patients and their families over the past 3 years. I have written numerous do not resuscitate orders too, but I never knew how to help someone find a peaceful death. I know how to do it now. And I was bursting with pride for him and his new competency. This is one way our trainees learn to provide clarity, kindness, and empathy when it is needed most. And that is worth practicing. I hope these stories are memorable for you and you were able to follow the through line. I hope you will develop and practice empathy and you find the value and importance of empathy in your professional life. I also hope you remember to write down your stories, share them with others. Finally, I hope you will be a profound influence on others, like Dr. Alper. Thank you for your attention this morning. Congratulations to each of the nominees. Oh, I have some time. Any questions? Comments? Concerns? Thoughts? Stories to tell? Oh, thank you. Yes, Dean? Yes. Yeah, so the question was, if I could do one thing differently, what would it be? Sometimes I can be a taskmaster, and I don't ever want people to be like me. You know, that people hold up my life as an example of what I've accomplished, and sometimes they think they have to be like me. And I think all too often I let that slip through instead of saying, don't be like me, be like yourself. And, you know, I liked the accolades and the admiration, but in fact, it was kind of false. And I really want people to be like who they are, not like who I am. So I would have stopped that kind of crazy stuff earlier. Other questions? Stories? Nothing? You didn't like it, huh? A lot to unpack, yeah. Well, you can get the slide deck. It's just a lot of pictures, but if you want my talk, I can give that to you. And if you want to read my stories, I must confess, I was asked to write a chapter in a book about master clinicians at being put out by some friends at Mass General. And they asked me to write the chapter on empathy, which is like, what? At first, I didn't know what to say, but you know, it was a 6-month process, so I could write it. And I do not have a tenure for the language, like Dr. Zwerdling thinks. And I amortized that chapter into this talk. So I got 2 uses out of it. Yes.
What are you optimistic about in medicine now, and what is concerning to you?
So the question is, what am I optimistic about and what am I concerned with? I'm very optimistic about the young physicians that I work with. They are thoughtful, teachable, learnable, smart, excited. And that mojo that they bring with them on a daily basis is super exciting. What I'm less excited about is some of my older colleagues who tend to be a bit more fossilized, a little less forgiving, a little less understanding, and as a result are not as good at teachers as they were, or mentors, as they were 10, 15 years ago. So I spend a lot of time with mature physicians trying to rekindle that spirit that first brought them into medicine and trying to tell them how to ignite it in their learners. And of course, one political comment, I'm terrified for women nowadays. I think that some of the recent laws are going to bring about terrible situations. And I do want women to feel empowered and to take back their bodies. I don't want the handmaiden's tale to be accurate. And I think that the control that people, you know, good-willed people are exercising on women is just terrible. So I'm very upset about that. Yes.
Thank you for the talk. I wanted to ask about how you manage providing that amount of empathy to patients, but not trying to find a balance between that, not bringing it home with you, the amount of impact and the connection you have with patients, but I think take on you and trying to lead up the door, how that blends with your home life.
Yeah.
Just trying to balance that. Conversation takes part of that, or how you manage those aspects.
Really wonderful and insightful question. And the question was, how do I manage to be empathetic at work and leave it there and not take it home? Well, I don't. My wife is very understanding. She likes to hear about my day. I tell her about it. And I don't try and create that schism or feel like I have to protect them from what goes on at work. You know, they're engaged with my work. So I don't really have an artificial separation, and it's kind of impossible for me to do that anyway. I mean, maybe you can do it, For some partners, it might be important to do because they don't want to hear what's going on. I found that my wife does want to hear. She doesn't, and she doesn't want to be excluded. When I was making rounds at the AIDS program in San Francisco General, I'd often take my young daughters with me at rounds. Everyone would say, "What are you doing? You know, we don't know much about this disease." I said, "Well, we know it's not aerosolized contagion." And the young men who were dying loved to see these little forces of life with me. When I went around and made rounds, I'd introduce them. They loved it too. Even now, my almost 40-year-old daughter remembers going on rounds with me and seeing patients. So, you know, I always included them. I never separated them, never could, never thought about it. Maybe that's another big mistake I made, Dean. Yeah.
My one question is, how do you teach the, our profession is one of those professions where people have actually boarded, that has the potential to back into
Yeah.
Is that enough for you to say this person is not vetted enough? I don't think they'll make a doctor. I mean, they may be technically skilled and be the smartest person in the room, but don't have patient connection. How do you teach them that, or at least be satisfied with the training, their training?
Yeah, yeah.
so you're not able to achieve that, limited to achieve that.
Yeah. So the question is, how do you try and teach empathy at a point when the financial rewards may not be rewarding?
So the financial reward is the motivation to get into medical field, more so than company, that kind of.
Yeah. Oh, so how do you take medical students or pre-med students and help them? You know, I haven't seen a lot of it. You know, I'm kind of lucky. I'm at Stanford, and these are some really great kids, very brilliant. But I usually tell them by giving them my business card, right? On my business card is, and some of the award nominees I gave my business card to last night has my email address and my personal cell phone on it. And I give it to patients. And I look at them and I said, "Do you know why I give this to patients?" He said, "No, I think you're crazy." I said, "No, I get maybe 2 or 3 inappropriate calls per year for patients. I give it to them for 2 things. I want them to have access when it's important, and I want them to learn when their concern is really not that important and can wait." But to med students and residents, I show them the card because I'm hopeful that Stanford, just like in your training here, that they will learn enough medicine to be able to be thoughtful in the moment when a patient calls, not to think about other things, but to review their knowledge, to have the clinical judgment, to advise their patient on the phone, and to learn the boundaries of those phone calls. You know, if someone calls me on a Saturday night, I need my hydrochlorothiazide renewed in 3 days. Will you be able to do that? And I say, "That's not why I gave you my cell phone number. Call back during business hours." So they know that there are certain parameters that are acceptable and certain that are not. But you know how many patients like that I trust them enough to give them my cell phone? Everyone. And how do I help the pre-med students, the medical students, the residents with this? Is by showing them that this is one way to do it. It doesn't, getting back to the dean's question, it's my way, may not be everyone's way, but it's my way. And sometimes all we can really do is model being the very best physician, the very best person we can be. And I'll be thankful for Jean for helping me understand what my very best is. Other questions? Concerns? Fears? Triumphs? Well, again, I wanted to congratulate all the nominees. You must be sterling in your example to others. Water attack. Careful. It's a little wet right here.
Try not to get electrocuted. Just one thing I just want to let you know is remember, excellent physicians start as excellent human beings. And so I remember moving here from New Jersey, not the most friendliest state in the world, but I remember Dr. Haynes calling me his brother. And I remember my brother saying, wait a second, I thought I was your brother. I remember Dr. Haynes saying, I appreciate you. These are comments that really made a difference and really makes me enjoy living in the South. Not something we hear a lot in New Jersey. So remember, the most important thing to being a great doctor is to be a great human being. So now we're going to move on to the exciting part of our ceremony. Before I do that, I want to recognize some important people here because we can't do all this without a lot of people behind the scenes and a lot of people who help our residents. So we have several chairs, program directors, program coordinators, faculty. I'm not going to ask them all to stand up, but let's just give them a round of applause for all the work they do. There are no winners. As I announce these nominees, all of us are winners. All of us want to help our patients. So really, all the nominees are winners. And so I just want to acknowledge them and acknowledge our faculty, program directors, program coordinators, all the people who are behind the scenes. A special thanks goes to people who helped me with this. We met for a couple of months about doing this. So thanks to Liz Jones. I don't know if she's here today, who is our main person in our GME office. Thanks to Rosalind, who is in Hawaii right now and probably wants to stay there right now. Hopefully she'll come back. Thanks to all the people who really helped put this together. A special thanks, and this is kind of, also a remarkable thing. Pam Scott is been here for over 40 years, has been with trainees in GME for 50 years. She just retired April 30th. And I don't know if she's on Zoom, but she's somewhere around here. And so, she is ultimately a real representation of the true nature of support. I mean, if you ever call Pam Scott, she doesn't know how to turn off her phone. She doesn't know what voicemail is. She will pick up the phone and she will talk with you. And so I hope she's on Zoom somewhere, but I don't know if Pam, you're here or not, but let's just give her a round of applause. We are lucky enough that she actually won't be leaving us. We knew that she wouldn't want to leave us. She will be around and really be a consultant and a historian for what GME has been here. And we really do need that, especially for people like me who haven't been here that long. So we are really happy to know that she'll be helping us with everything going on. There are some other important people I'd like to recognize. One of the things that my job is, how do I get people from administration to come to these events? Because, we want the people from the C-suite to really recognize the people who do the work. And they do work too. I'm not saying they don't, but it's my goal is to bring our administrative C-suite to meet with our residents, to have some commonality. We did a great Thank a Resident Day. It was really well attended. We need to do more events like this where we bring in people and really show our appreciation for the hard work of residents. I've seen residents commit suicide in my past. I've seen residents struggle with well-being. These are kind of the events that really make a difference, I believe, in a resident's life. So we really want to make sure to thank them. In our audience today, and again, I don't know everyone's names, but I do want to recognize a couple of people. I see Kelly Davis back there. Kelly Davis, and is it Bridget Grant? Okay, sorry, I had to have no pictures, I just have names. So they are from UTHSC Memphis Development Office. So I want to thank them both for coming here. Jim Coleman, like I said, couldn't be here. I don't know if Tyler Winks is here. Tyler Winks is our Chief Operating Officer. Rachel Harris No, Chief Nursing Officer Jensen Hyde, Dr. Jensen Hyde, a former resident here, who is now our Chief Medical Officer is here. So we want to thank her. I know Adam Schrader's here. Adam Schrader's in the back. He's our VP of Operations, and he tours the resident call rooms with us. And he's the one that we help us make adjustments when you call us about leaks or problems. He's the guy I call. So I want to thank Adam Schrader for his support. Any other people that I missed? Julie Taylor, is Julie Taylor, thank you for pointing people out. Again, Julie Taylor is from the foundation, and she and I have worked closely on this event and on other events. And so without their support, we really couldn't put this together. So thank you, Julie. Thank you for attending as well. Anyone else from the C-suite? Okay. And last but not least, I got to thank our deans, Dr. Giuseppe Pizzorno, our Dean of Research, Dr. Crystal, where's Crystal? She was here, there she is. So Crystal Maddox, our Dean of Finance, and of course, my brother, Dr. James Haynes, our Dean, my brother from a different mother, is also in the audience today. So thank you all. Thank you, dignitaries. Thank you, faculty. Thank you, everyone, for attending this event. It means a lot to me, and I'm sure it means a lot to our residents to see you all here. So now I'd like to introduce Dr. Chess Alper, who wanted to say a few words about his father and about the awards, and then we'll get into the meat of the event. Thank you.
It's been a great day. Really appreciate everyone being here, everyone in the room, everyone on Zoom. So I've got some thank yous myself up front. First to Dr. Khan. Thank you so much. Many of the things that you shared, your 7 thoughts, definitely apply to my dad. And you mentioned about taking your daughter on rounds when she was 6 years old. My dad took me on rounds with him when I was 6 years old. So I got to see the type of attitude and approach to practice that you described so well today, and that's represented by this award that our family has established. We wanted to honor all of those qualifications, all those assets, all those just wonderful qualities. It goes into making exceptional physicians. So first, thank you, Dr. Khan. Dr. Haynes, Dr. Schwartzberg, the newbies for this program this year, we'll keep you on for another year, okay? All right. Thank you so much for all your enthusiastic support. Dr. Panda, who over the years has been so supportive of everything that we've done. We wish her the best. Our whole family is just grateful for your support for this program. Dr. Schwartzberg mentioned a few people who are on the planning committee. I'm going to mention a few other people, probably repeat some names. Certainly Pam Scott at the top of that list, and Liz Jones, Julie Taylor, we've worked with in the foundation, has been wonderful. Other members of our planning committee were Rosalind Stewart, Colloquio, Chris Vaughn, Madison Shooter, Nolan English, Blaine Kelly, Lucy White. Thank you all for promoting the program and elevating it, I think, and hopefully will continue to evolve. Also want to thank, and yes, we're recognizing these 11 residents, but I want to thank, I just believe that every one of you joining us today, all the healthcare providers, residents throughout the Erlanger Health System, Thank you for providing the service, the care that you give to the patients in our community. Just thank you for your service and your dedication. A couple of things about Dr. Alper. A little audience participation here, but it's silent participation. I want you to think for a moment of a person in your life who treated everyone with respect. Patients, hospital staff, fellow physicians, man on the street. Think of another person who showed compassion and empathy in dealing with people. Think of another person who was committed to doing the right things and committed and dedicated to their craft. Forever learning, never assuming they knew it all. And think of someone who has demonstrated integrity in all actions in their life. When you put all those people together, you would have Dr. Alper. So today we're here to recognize those qualities in the nominees who have been nominated by their peers for representing all of these wonderful qualities. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to get to the exciting part. First off, this has all been exciting, by the way. So, but I know most of you are waiting for these awards, so we got to get going. First off, one of the things that Dr. Alper, when I first took on this job, I was a little overwhelmed, but I know one of the important things he wanted to do was that he wanted the program directors to nominate these residents, and he wanted comments from staff to really show their appreciation. We're talking comments from the people who cleans the rooms to nurses to patients. And so this year, if you haven't checked out the intranet, we have stories and pictures of all the nominees. And I urge you, if you haven't seen the website, it's really remarkable. It has pictures of all the nominees. There's a little link where you can write a story. And I'm hoping that it stays up and, you know, we can share more stories that I've received. I wasn't a judge on this, but I did review some of the stories, and I can tell you that a lot of them were really heartfelt, and not only from other residents, but from patients, nurses, you know, chief medical officers, colleagues, medical assistants, social workers, and it was really phenomenal. And that was really probably a really important thing for me to see is that the recognition was throughout the hospital. And I won't read you all their letters and stories, and maybe I can't tell you all the stories, but certainly the words that rang true amongst all those comments were integrity, compassion, leadership, and a commitment to advocacy. And so those words are the words that really came across to me in the different comments that were given to me by these particular nominees. So this was a tough decision. I had to give the judges 2 votes because it was so close that I actually had to ask them to vote again. So I want to say that it was a really, really tight decision to come up with a winner. But before we do that, we need to honor the nominees. And I've gone through and made sure I pronounce your names correctly before you come up, but you're going to have to come up here. And if I mispronounce your name, I apologize again, because as a person who does graduation speeches, I've often mispronounced people's names. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each of you to stand up here, and you will receive your certificate from Dr. Alper. Please don't open your certificate just yet. This is like Survivor. We can't announce the winner just yet. So don't open it, but please come up. and receive your certificate. So first, I'd like to recognize Dr. Hannah Bowers, Chief Resident from Obstetrics and Gynecology. And there'll be photos afterwards, so this is going to be like our pre-graduation party one day. Next up, I'd like to recognize Dr. Mark Erickson, who is our Chief Fellow in Cardiology. Next is Dr. Haley Everett, our Chief Resident PGY6 in General Surgery. And it's funny, at the dinner, I think this is the first time all these residents from different specialties even met each other. So this is really phenomenal. I hope they get to be good friends after this event. Next up is Dr. Alyssa Farrell, who's our senior resident in internal medicine. Dr. Alexander Jones, who's our chief resident PGY3 in family medicine. Dr. Robert Kimmel, our chief resident PGY8 in plastic surgery. By the way, I have no idea where these guys are going after graduation, so you could probably ask them. Dr. Colton Norton is our chief resident PGY5 in orthopedic surgery. Dr. Anjali Patel is our chief fellow PGY6 in gastroenterology. Dr. Paola Rodriguez is our senior resident PGY3 from pediatrics. Oh, running out of room here. Dr. Chris Sharetta is our chief resident PGY3 in emergency medicine. And finally, Dr. David Thompson is our chief resident PGY5 in urology. So let's give all of them a big round of applause. They're all the winners. And now I'm pleased to announce our survivor. That's what it feels like. So again, there are no winners, but it was a really close call. I'm not a judge, so I had nothing to do with any of this, but the official winner decided on by four of our judges for the 2024 Alper Humanitarian Award is, drum roll. There you go. Excellent. Is Dr. Paola Rodriguez. And of course, she has to say a few words unannounced.
I had no idea would win, but I want to thank my husband for being here, my whole family for instilling values. Sorry, getting emotional. For Dr. Garcia and the rest of the pediatric program and the residents that are so great with me in the pediatrics department, and the Alper family. It was so nice to meet you guys. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm going to try to keep my composure so I don't start crying. I believe that concludes. We're going to have a photo session, and we have people from social media. So those who enjoy Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, whatever these, the X, whatever, make sure you check out social media after this event, because there'll be lots of pictures there. But I want to keep our nominees here. Please come up. We're going to take some photos. Thank you all so much for coming. This is my first year, and it turned out to be a really great event, and I'm really excited to recognize all our residents, even those in the audience. Thank you for doing such a great job. We really appreciate you. Thank you for coming, and have a good day.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Sorry, I'm mushy too. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, yeah.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are
I feel like everyone's got their diploma now. I feel like I should hang out.
I'm gonna take a picture with your diploma. Let's just share it on our social media page.
Right.
We have a social media.
I know, everyone has their own social media. Yeah. Good work to do a graduation like this. This is my, yeah. It's really Oh, really? That's awesome. Oh, this is great. See, in our program, we have a GME graduation too. And all the residents who graduated. We hand out the diplomas, so kind of remind you of them. It's really cool. Yeah. What are you doing next year?
We'll be going down to Florida. Florida, nice and warm.
Is this a part of the practice?
We imported her from Florida, we're exporting her back to Florida. Florida, we can never get the port out of her.
Congratulations. I missed you last night. I know, how was it? Good. Yeah. We got our bellies full, so it's fine. I know. Okay, I know people's names on Epic Chat. That's how you recognize. Yeah, I grew up in Atlanta, then I your job. I'm married in yeah, my husband had my job always lost it up. Came back, I was like, rotation. Yes, I do like so forever I do it. I don't know. A lot. It kind of feels right. I think that right. It's a little of the attitude. Now I think I was gonna keep one. I love TV. Really? Okay. We're 7 months out. I really like it. I think overall, I know my I never would have anticipated. Yes. All right.
Oh, yeah. So much press.
We're gonna leave.
I guess I have to.
I'm not used to your hair.
Hey, everyone come to the front. We want to get a group picture with all the nominees. Can everyone come to the front? This is your big moment.
One with the nominees and then let the family step in
Okay,
with them and Dr.
Awesome.
Khan as well.
okay. So,
Here's your photographer. The other-
so one, you have a photographer there. Both these two ladies are photographers, basically. They were the ones who post things on social media. Right, right. So Stacy, and so they're going to put it on social media. Okay, everyone smile. Okay, remember, this is on social media, so please like make us look good, all right? No frowns. We'll see you on Facebook.
Okay. All right. Carol, Debbie, y'all want to get in over there now? Dr. Khan, you want to come in?
Sure.
This is gonna require.
Okay, get in a pyramid.
Got him?
Do we need anybody else with our group of nominees?
Oh, I want to be in
You
here.
need to be in here too.
Yeah.
No, well, yeah, put his head.
I don't
here.
Yeah.
Then next, we would like a couple with our winner and.
Are there family nominees here?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations. Good luck to you.
Oh, yeah. You guys are- Yeah, you can open your certificate.